Texas 28, Georgia 21, the big upset for the Longhorns in the Big 12 at the Sugar Bowl tonight. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, with an instant recap, bringing in Steve Helwick from the University of Texas and also the Daily Texan live right from the sideline with Bevo in the background. I could not have anticipated anything this great, Steve.
It's a great night, fantastic night. Bevo, he was a star on Twitter early in the night. I think he had the first offensive attack on Georgia, and then the Longhorns just continued it from there. That was a metaphor for the rest of the night. What Texas did to Georgia, they just attacked him offensively, and Georgia just ran away. And Texas got a 28-21 victory here in the Sugar Bowl, and the big fellow is moving around. He's still up.
Absolutely. If there was any question about motivation, he certainly set the tone early. And then the Texas players just fed off of his energy.
Yes, Bevo set the tone early, but Sam Ehlinger did so much for the Longhorns tonight. He had 64 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns against a really good Georgia defense. And Ehlinger, he's already playing bigger than a sophomore already. I can't believe Texas will still have 2 more years of him if he doesn't declare for the draft early. Because Ehlinger, he's done so much for this program, just as much as Herman, I think, just with his running, his passing ability, and overall his confidence. He took a lot of major strides this year, stopped committing turnovers, and he came into this game and just helped beat the Georgia Bulldogs. And Ehlinger outplayed Fromm and outplayed the entire Georgia offense tonight, who really couldn't run for anything, couldn't pass for anything until late. So Texas, although the score is just a 7-point game, Texas seemed to dominate this game. It wasn't really close until the end.
So we have folks jumping on the live stream right now and into the chat room. Yes, this is Steve Helwick from the Daily Texan and also the University of Texas campus television station with Bevo in the background, who, of course, was blowing up Twitter and social media with his presence in his standoff against Uga, which obviously is very one-sided, as was much of the football game, as you mentioned. Yes, Sam Ehlinger. This guy has never been questioned in regards to his spirit, his leadership, his energy, his fight. But now he's a polished quarterback. But he really, I thought he was just flat out would have to be exhausted sometimes with the load that he was shouldering during this game. But he just kept bringing it to that Georgia defense.
I know although Texas got a lot of good rushing production out of Trey Watson tonight, Ehlinger is usually the one who carries that running game. I mean, he had 3 touchdowns. He is their goal line offense, so I'm surprised he doesn't get more exhausted too. The Georgia defense, I mean, the secondary did fine, even without DeAndre Baker, and the defense was a little banged up, but Texas's defense just outplayed them. I know Baker would have definitely helped the Georgia Bulldogs, limiting Lil Jordan Humphrey on some of those runs and catches he had early in the game, but Ehlinger, he was able to take that Georgia defense out. And one thing I also wanted to talk about was during the CFP semifinals, we had 6 or 7 Georgia players go on Twitter tweeting things about the playoff committee and how they're one of the best 4 teams. I think the loss validates that perhaps they're not.
And I think you're legitimate in saying that. There are different motivations for different players and different teams. It's complete conjecture for any of us to try to project what's going on between the ears and in the hearts of any particular player or team. All we can go by, Steve, is, of course, the results. And the results say that this team had the opportunity to go up against the 2nd seed in the Big 12, and they did not get the job done.
Yeah, Georgia is a fantastic team. Don't get me wrong. I know a lot of Georgia fans felt a little slighted by some of the comments I said last time. They played their worst game of the season outside the LSU game tonight. I really expected DeAndre Swift to have more than 12 yards rushing, and just the Georgia. I thought Georgia was just going to pound Texas on the ground. I was very surprised by how Texas's front 7 managed to handle Georgia's offensive line in the rushing attack, because there were so many tackles for loss in this game. They got to Fromm easily. Texas, the front 7 was the defining part of the game as Bevo exits the stadium for good. But it's a huge Sugar Bowl victory, and this does a lot for the Longhorns. Oh, wait, Bevo's going on my backpack.
Bevo's the star. There's no question about that, Steve.
Yeah, Bevo did a lot tonight. But I think this win is a huge statement for the Texas Longhorns, especially going into 2019. You see Oklahoma's losing Kyler Murray. I know they lost Baker Mayfield last year, but one of these days the clown car of Heisman quarterbacks has to end at Oklahoma, and you have to think at this point, is Texas now the best-looking team in the Big 12 going into the new year? That's one takeaway from this game. And then the other one is I don't really have too many takeaways on Georgia. Their game was a little confusing. Every team has bad games. We saw it today from teams like Penn State, UCF, Mississippi State, teams that should have won. And tonight was Georgia's bad game. They're a good team. I think they win this game more than 5 times out of 10. But tonight, they weren't getting anything past the Texas front seven until it was too late.
So, Steve, what you just said, I think the audience should take note of that, being a very gracious comment that despite Texas winning by a touchdown, and as we both acknowledge, and anybody that watched the game, they were far more in control of the game than just a touchdown victory at 28-21. They were the better team for the majority of the game, that you're gracious enough to say, hey, I still acknowledge that Georgia may have had a down night. I'm not going to try to predict or project a motivation, but if you look at the course of the season and the complete resume, Georgia's an excellent team, and they probably would win more than 5 out of 10 games.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't really buy things about motivation, because I think anytime these players step on the field, you see all the competitiveness and all. I mean, at the end of the game, it was getting a little chippy, lots of aggressiveness. I think every play, I don't buy into those arguments. I think every player that ever sets foot on a college football field is giving their 110%. I just think tonight Texas delivered better than Georgia, and you have to credit Ellinger, you have to credit Lil Jordan Humphrey, Charles Omenihu, some of those key players that were able to get the best of their counterparts on the Georgia side of the ball.
Yeah, for all the talk about lack of motivation and possible lack of effort in some of these bowl games, I didn't see any evidence of that in any of the games, and especially in this one. I saw Georgia players hitting hard, running to the football. I saw complete effort out of both teams. I thought it was an exceptionally hard-hitting and solid effort from both squads across the board.
I agree. This was a really aggressive game, but one thing, my first takeaway after this game was, outside of Texas fans, this isn't a game that you're going to go up on YouTube and search highlights of from past years, like last year's Rose Bowl or even the previous year's Rose Bowl. There wasn't really a single defining play in this game. Every drive seemed to go down slow, steady, 3-yard gain, 5-yard gain, 10-yard gain, and then there were a lot of punts. There weren't too many turnovers. There were just 2 turnovers, 1 fumble and 1 interception. I didn't think there were any big home run highlight plays in this game. It was just Texas just slow and steady against Georgia, and Georgia had to punt a lot of times. I mean, the Bulldogs almost pulled off a pretty good comeback at the end. And that says a lot about the team right there, and the guys Kirby Smart coach, that down 28-7, that they still got this within a 1-possession game. But this isn't a game that anyone other than the Texas fans going to go on YouTube, rewatch highlights, just because there weren't any. I mean, it's a 1-score game, but I don't think this was one of the more exciting New Year Six bowls. It was just pound it, and points will come every once in a while.
Yeah, in that respect, it was somewhat similar to the Ohio State Rose Bowl win against Washington, where the Buckeyes were in control. They had a huge lead, even more so than Texas. But yes, Washington had a shot at the end, but not a reasonable shot. Never had the ball with a chance to win the game. So, Steve, we'll have plenty of time to talk about Texas's hopes for 2019. But what would be your initial thought about projecting what the team accomplished this year, what it means toward 2019? Obviously, you've got a good thought in regards to the personnel that's been brought in, the recent recruiting classes that have been some of the best in the nation, and just your thoughts about what this team may be able to do next fall.
Not trying to show off or anything here, but I have projected the Texas record. I projected it right the previous 3 years, and this year I said 9-4. So
wait a minute, you got it preseason for 3 consecutive years?
I did 5-7 my freshman year, 5-7 my sophomore year, 7-6 my junior year. This year I said 9-4, and they went
Wow.
10-4. So it was close. I already tweeted something I hope doesn't end up on Freezing Cold Takes, where I said next year Texas is Big 12 champions. They'll dethrone Oklahoma's 4 in a row. I said book it. A lot of that, more of that has to do with Kyler Murray leaving, just because I don't know what Oklahoma will be like with whoever they name their starting quarterback next year. So, but Texas has Ellinger returning, and no Greer, Cornelius, Murray. He's the best quarterback in the Big 12, and I don't really think that there's another candidate you could put up there. And Tom Herman, he just won his second New Year's Six Bowl since 2015 in his second straight bowl game with Texas, a team that wasn't even making bowl games when he got there. So they're already ahead of schedule on this rebuild that they had. They're recruiting really well. They're getting consistent top 10 classes. The defensive backs that they're bringing in are excellent. You watch guys, Caden Stearns, BJ Foster. BJ Foster had one heck of a game tonight, and they're just freshmen. They're just scratching the surface of what their true potential is. I don't know if I'm ready to say Texas is a CFP contender yet. I mean, I feel like anyone could be a CFP contender in those 3 or 4 spots now, because there's a clear top 2 team. But I think Big 12 champion is what they should be projected for next year, just because the team has so many key returners, and they did lose some seniors, mainly on defense. Guys like Charles Amenahu, PJ Locke, Breckenhager, Brandon Jones might declare for the draft. But I think Ellinger and the Big 12 is good enough to just carry this team to another title. And if Lil Jordan Humphrey stays, their star wide receiver, and Colin Johnson, if they both stay, this program's offense is going to be really deadly.
We got Steve Helwick on the line. My apologies, Steve. I thought you were done there. We got Steve Helwick on the line from the University of Texas and the Daily Texan as well. And again, folks out there, if you didn't catch that, it's on record. Steve correctly projected and prognosticated Texas's record for the past 4 years, and we'll give him a bit of a favorable conclusion to this year's record, because obviously Texas played the extra game in the Big 12 championship game and finished at 10-4 instead of 9-4. But the bright future for Tom Herman as he continues to bring in some of the best recruiting classes in the nation, and obviously Texas taking the steps forward with the Texas Bowl win last year, competing hard in the Big 12, coming within a couple possessions of winning the Big 12 this year, dethroning and knocking off one of the top teams in the nation tonight at the Sugar Bowl. Steve, I've covered several bowl games. I know that it's a bit of a grind. It's a long day, so I appreciate you standing by after getting all your post-game work done with player and coaches interviews. So thanks for sticking around. I'm sure they're about to kick you out of the Superdome there.
Oh, they have a media meal going on at 3 a.m. No one ever sleeps in New Orleans. I've noticed that the past couple of nights, spent 2 years here. So I'll have plenty to do. And just to put it on the record, Texas will go, I'll say 12-2 next year.
Oh, you've already thrown it out there for us. 12-2 for the Longhorns next year.
Not too much. That sounds too much. I'm gonna say 11-2 going into bowl game. I'll just say 11-3. 11-3. There's my final. 11-3.
Okay. I'm not going to hold you to it, because I don't make predictions until they're about ready to kick off the season. It usually takes me that long to figure it out. Steve Helwick from the Daily Texan and also the University of Texas campus TV station, so graciously sticking around after the Texas-Georgia game with the big Sugar Bowl win for the Longhorns that should elevate them into the final polls. Top 10, I would think. Steve, where do you think Texas will probably land in the final rankings?
I have no clue what to do with these rankings so far. I don't even know who's number 3, because I'm not touching Notre Dame at number 3. I think maybe Oklahoma, and then Ohio State at 4. I mean, the Purdue loss is the only reason I probably won't put Ohio State at 3 after watching Purdue in the Music City Bowl. You put those 2, 3, 4, let's see, 5. I guess you put Notre Dame. They have 1 loss.
Sure.
Notre Dame 5. Although I can't put Notre Dame above UCF. I just can't get myself to do that. But yeah, then Florida, LSU, LSU. I think you have to put Texas above Georgia. I weigh postseason results more than anything, and I think that a team that wins a bowl should be above every single team that loses a bowl, considering bowl games are supposed to be teams paired of similar stature. And considering what Texas did to Georgia, I think you have to put Texas higher. So I'm going to put Texas one spot above Georgia. That should probably be 9 or 8 or 9. The wild cards are, I think you have to put Florida above LSU because Florida beat LSU. And then LSU beat Georgia. Well, but Georgia beat Florida.
Yeah, it's impossible to keep them in order based on head-to-head matchups.
Yeah,
you just
I like
can't
to do
that.
head-to-head as tiebreakers only, but there's so much working to do because I can't. It's so hard to sort the teams: Georgia, Notre Dame, Texas, LSU, Florida, UCF, Michigan. There's so many teams just you can throw in a clump and put in any order, I believe.
Sure.
Because this season there were a clear top 2, and then it was just everybody else. I'm also, my phone's on 1% battery.
All right,
so
Steve.
I don't want the stream to cut out in the middle.
Thank you so much for stopping by. We appreciate you giving us some post-game analysis. Have a good trip back.
Thank you so much. Have a happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Steve Helwick from the Daily Texan and also the University of Texas campus TV station joining us to break down Texas's big win, a huge win for the program, and Tom Herman over Georgia tonight, 28-21. I will check on the chat room to answer any questions and respond to any comments that you have. Then we'll shut it down and remind you that I'm going to have post game from all these bowl games. I took notes all day. I just completed an Ohio State Washington recap at the Rose Bowl. I've got Mississippi State Iowa notes, UCF and LSU, and also Penn State and Kentucky. We'll get to those soon. And I'm lining up guests for Wednesday night to talk about the postmortem and the look ahead to 2019 for the likes of Miami, Florida, Ohio State, and others, Kentucky as well. As we do it up right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, with the best discussion, debate, and analysis. Let's see what you guys have. All right. Yes, Cheryl. Busy. And the wake-up call's at about 7. So we're looking at about 4.5 hours of sleep. So we will shut it down here soon unless you got anything for me. Groon asking what happens to Kirby next year if he has another disappointing year. Let's put this into context. They lost the SEC championship game in the last minute of play. He had a top 3 recruiting class. They lost 3 games. They lost a bowl game to Texas. They had a disappointing night. They were clearly the second best team in the SEC. Many would estimate the second best team during the regular season in the country. Kirby Smart has no issues. He would have to lose 5, 6, 7 games next year to have any issues with the University of Georgia administration. So that question is null and void at this point. Is Kirby Smart the new Mark Richt? Oh my goodness. How many national championships will Ryan Day win? Well, if we had an objective playoff system where teams actually earned spots and weren't selected, I could probably give that a better projection because maybe Urban Meyer would have won more national championships, but he had a team that was selected in 2016 that maybe shouldn't have been. And he had teams in 2015, 17, and 18 that certainly had as good a resume as 1 or 2 of the teams that were selected. So for Ryan Day, winning Big Ten championships is what it's all about. And then you have to leave it at this point in the hands of the committee and hopefully avoid a 29-point loss against Purdue, because the losses, obviously, as has been proven by the committee, count more than significant major quality wins, because Ohio State has certainly had the quality win component nailed down over their chief competitor, meaning Alabama last year and Oklahoma this year, but they lost the more miserable looking game. So I don't know what to tell you about Ryan Day's future at Ohio State. I was thinking that Urban Meyer was probably going to stick around for 12 to 15 years once he signed at Ohio State in 2012. It seems like just yesterday that Urban Meyer took over the program after the Tattoo Gate and the Luke Fickell year and the Michigan loss in 2011. The next day, he was announced as the Ohio State head coach. I actually just checked out the news conference or a few minutes of it today, just kind of reminiscing in regards to this being a very quick run for Urban Meyer at Ohio State, not compared to most college football coaches, because most coaches remain at a program only a handful of years. But for a guy who obviously had arguably the most successful run at the university ever and the most successful run of any college football coach over the span of 7 years, and then over the entirety of his career, 17 years, 17 seasons, the most successful run. Obviously, the health issues and other things came into play. All right. Anything else? Notre Dame robbed Ohio State. Are you live, Mark? Monday. Monday meaning next Monday? Probably not. Okay, we're talking about national championship. Unfortunately, for the national championship, as was the case last year, if any of you know where I work, we're highly involved in presenting the national championship. So I have to work national championship night a full shift. So I will not be here live. What I did last year was I had a couple replacements who were able to do a live stream at the end of the Alabama-Georgia game. So I will prepare and hope to do the same after the national championship game on Monday night. So, Cheryl, I thank you for the reminder, and I will certainly have a ton of preview and prediction videos available before the national championship game. And then once it's played, I will give my analysis. But I will also want to have instant analysis here on the channel. So I'll bring on a few very capable replacements for me on Monday night. So thanks for the reminder. Alan is asking about the performance of the Power Five conferences during bowl season. That is certainly something that I look at each and every off season, Alan. I have done an exercise each and every off season in which I take all the Power Five results against each other and I seed each conference, and therefore I weight the games. So think of it this way. If the number one seed in the SEC defeats the number one seed in the ACC, as would be the case if Alabama beats Clemson in the national championship game, then that's a fair fight. It's a fair comparison. But when Alabama defeated Louisville, who finished as the worst team in the ACC, you can't credit the SEC with as significant a win or discredit the ACC. So the teams have to be seeded and the games weighted. So I take the records of each conference and I weight the games proportionate to the standings or the seedings in each conference, and I come up with a metric of which Power Five league played the best against the other leagues, and then second, third, fourth, and fifth. All right. So we will go through that. But off the top of my head, who played the best in the bowl season? I think it's still the SEC off the top of my head. And again, this may be the tiebreaker in the national championship game because the ACC has outperformed what I expected. Syracuse beat West Virginia. They got a win, of course, with Clemson over Notre Dame. They also had some wins with Wake Forest defeating Memphis. Nice win for the ACC there. Who else? They had a few other wins that I'm not coming up with. The Boston College game was canceled against Boise State. Virginia with a huge win over South Carolina from the SEC, 28-0. The losses came from Georgia Tech against Minnesota. Miami was blasted by Wisconsin, Pitt lost to Stanford by a point. North Carolina State was annihilated by North Carolina State. Don't know what the record for the ACC is right now, but they perform pretty well. I think right now it's quite a tussle between the Big Ten, the ACC, and the SEC. The Big Ten had a couple of very narrow losses, with Michigan State losing to Oregon by 1, and Penn State, of course, today by a field goal. Believe they should have gone for the 4th down play with 4 minutes left in the game and never got the ball back, except for with 1 second left, as they lost to Kentucky. On the flip side, Iowa was fortunate to pull out a game against Mississippi State. Ohio State won the Rose Bowl. Northwestern may have had one of the more impressive showings for any team in postseason play, down 20-3, coming back to win over Utah 31-20 at the Holiday Bowl. This is Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Marcus, George.
Hey, George. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm still a little bit stunned about the Georgia game.
You're stunned?
Yeah, I didn't expect that, quite frankly.
Well, few did. I picked Georgia to win, but I certainly took Texas in the points. I thought it was going to be a pretty decent game.
I think what made it special was when they cut away with the camera and showed Justin Fields standing there. I'm like, what's going on in Georgia, man?
By all accounts, Justin Fields, to his credit, showed up every day at practice and did his job and put in his work and kept his mouth shut, they said.
How do you get every number 1 5-star player and fuck it up? That's what I want to know. I mean, whatever. They embarrassed the Southeastern Conference handily.
Well, it's a disappointing performance, certainly. They were a big favorite against a team that's a good team, but not a great team in Texas, and they were expected to win, and they shot their mouths off, a lot of the Georgia players, about how they should have been in the playoff, and they were one of the 4 best teams. Well, you need to go back it up in the bowl game if that's how you're going to talk, and they failed to do that. So, yeah, it's embarrassment for me. I understand where you're coming from, George. To me, it's a bit heavy of a word. I don't know that they were necessarily embarrassed. They didn't play well, and they lost to a team that they weren't supposed to lose to.
I'm a Gator, and I hate them, and I was embarrassed. So I'm pretty sure it was embarrassing. Everybody's embarrassed in the Southeastern Conference. Mississippi State's embarrassed for Georgia, you know?
So somebody on the live chat here is telling me that 12.5 points is not a big favorite. That individual who's called me a few times apparently doesn't really track point spreads in college football. Yes, in a bowl game, that was I believe that was the largest point spread of any bowl game. So when you play 41 bowl games and that's the largest point spread, I think that would be a fairly large point spread. I'm not a mathematician, but when it's the highest point spread of 41 games, I think that's pretty high.
You know, the fact of the matter is, Mark Richt is Kirby Smart 2.0. I mean, nothing's changed in Georgia. It's the same shit it used to be. You've seen it. He proved it. He had 2 #1 recruiting classes, and he's exactly Mark Richt. Isn't that great for Georgia? Poor people. I feel so sorry for them.
George, they just played in the national championship game last year.
Yeah, I saw that debacle. Is debacle the right word? I think it is.
You can go with debacle. I would think a debacle would be that they lost 42-3.
They had the game won. There's no way they could have lost the game. They're the same old Georgia. God damn, they were beating Alabama. No wonder they didn't show up today. They're like, okay, we suck.
Hey, George, please remember the audience here. Let's keep it clean.
I did it again. I feel like Britney Spears now.
So,
oops, I did it again.
Your joy and happiness over the Florida win just a few days ago hasn't lasted. You're all perturbed about the Georgia result.
The Florida win was a given. The Gators rock. We're back. We're not like Georgia pretending, you know, like Georgia can't even say they're back. They were never there in the first place. But that's not why I called, Mark. I wanted to say that I don't care how much of a genius you are. You can't pick the championship game. You just can't do it. It's impossible. I've looked it over, and you just can't pick it.
You don't think I'm going to be able to pick this game correctly?
And nobody can. It can go either way.
Well, sure it can.
It's just the most 50-50 proposition I've ever seen in my life.
So I've got a 50-50 shot.
All right. Let's flip a quarter right now. Heads is Clemson. Tails is Alabama.
Okay, you tell me what you come up with. I don't have any money.
Clemson by 3.
Clemson by 3. Okay. I wouldn't be surprised. I could go with that. I've had it myself a pretty good bowl season.
It was a fair coin toss. I mean, pick them, you know.
I am.
It could be Alabama by 30. I don't know.
I highly doubt that, but it could be. It could be. It's happened before.
I highly doubt that.
I'm 23-9 on the bowl games.
I'm just not ready for a Hawaiian quarterback to win the national title. I'm an old-fashioned
not ready
guy.
for that. All right, George. Thanks for calling. It's been a while. I appreciate you calling.
Hey, for a change, I'm looking forward to the off season. I'm like, yes, I'm not anxious anymore. Like, I'm willing to wait out the 8 months or whatever it takes to get back to football.
Well, you can pick up some kind of a hobby or do something else.
I'm happy.
All right, George, have a good one.
Survivalism, my new hobby. I'm storing water.
Absolutely.
Later.
All right, George, we'll see you.
Love you.
My man, George, who has been a supporter of the channel for years, and I am going to unofficially name George as holding the top spot for the most comments to the channel. So that's always helpful because YouTube tracks likes and comments. So that's helped me considerably. So George will always, always, always have a place here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. All right. All right. 23-9. So that's 23-9 straight up. It's 20-12 against the spread. I'll take that one as well. All right. Cheryl's telling me to go to bed. All right. Who is this George? West End. You should know who George is. You've been watching me for a long time. All right, everyone. I know that there are some people on the live chat that I've never seen your handles before, meaning KONGSD0NG and a few others. Thank you for watching Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. I believe you've arrived at the channel with the best discussion, debate, and analysis. We will be here tomorrow night. I don't know if I'm going to do a live stream, but I'll be producing videos because I'm lining up guests from Ohio State, Kentucky, Washington, Florida, a number of other guests as we basically wrap up the season and look forward to 2019. Leave your suggestions on what you would like me to produce. What videos would you, what subjects, what topics would you like me to take on? And we will do that. All right, everyone, you have a great night. Happy New Year. Thanks for your support, your contributions, everything you guys do. Leave your comments in the comment section. I'll get to as many as possible. I will see everyone on a Wednesday night. Have a good one.